Hello and welcome to day two, looking at the memoirs of Houghton. It's not going to pick it up with a light, is it? I do a little series looking at the interesting people, the rebels from history around this area. And some people found out about it in the village and they wanted me to have a look at this book. So I'm reading it with you and finding out what we've got. Now, this is the second book of the story. The first was looking at the history of Houghton, how it came to be set up, who some of the significant figures were in its early days. This one is book two, which is a collection of memoirs of life in the village of Great Houghton. And you may have noticed I haven't got my headphones on. I'm trying out a new mic. So this might be where we do 40 minutes of recording and then realise it was all wasted. So, I mean, I could just stop now, but where's the fun in that? Risk is our business. So, here we go. Rotherham Road, that's exciting. We've got a picture of Rotherham Road here. I say it's exciting because I live just where Rotherham Road and Main Road transfer into each other, and I'm not absolutely positive, but that might be the old inn, which is what my house is built on top of. Welcome to our second book in what we hope to be a series of books celebrating the history of the village of Great Houghton. Our first book, Historic Houghton, proved extremely popular. Yes! And to date has almost sold out of the first print. I recommend everybody get these. It'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Worldwide. The History Society of Great Houghton won't know what hit them. Why have we got 500 copies to America? This book contains extracts from a series of memoirs from. Let's look past that. Houghtoners. Many of the memoirs were noted back in the 1980s by Maureen Roebuck. These have sat untouched in our archives for years, so with Maureen's permission, we thought it was time that they were shared with the wider public. How much wider can we get than my enormous audience? Houghton Magna History Society would like to express of utmost thanks to Maureen Roebuck for allowing us to publish her works. The Society would also like to thank Julia Bywater, nee White, for her fantastic contribution of memories and sharing from excellent photographs. That's a good start. We thoroughly hope you enjoy the book as much as we have putting it together, and keep your eyes out for our next publications, the Houghton Magna History Society. Unfortunately, I believe when COVID hit, they disbanded. I think we need to put a petition together to get them up and running again. What do you reckon? Apparently they have nowhere to do it because they used to do it in the pubs, and all the pubs seem to have shut down around here, so I don't know, should I offer my living room for use? So, memoirs of Maureen Roebuck. The traveller passing through the village of Great Houghton could not be blamed for thinking that its riches, if any, lay deep underground at the coalface. But Great Houghton is more than just a mining village. The land around the spoil heaps is rich and fertile. Cattle can be seen grazing around the edges of the common, which stretches as far as the eye can see, and along the main road, farmhouses. Now, a common is a area of land that people allowed to come and graze their cattle on. So it's not really owned by anyone. I think it can be owned by them, but there's certain restrictions, like the public are still allowed to use it to gather firewood, to graze cattle. It can't be fenced off and things like that. It's like a land for everybody. So if anybody's got a cow and they want to bring it down to Great Houghton, you are more than welcome. Love to see you. And along the main road, farmhouses, old stone cottages, and neat modern housing developments are at oddly juxtaposition. The council estate and old stone terraces lay at the bottom of the village, blackened by many years of coal fires and grime. It is not in a place where one can generally keep oneself to oneself. People are known, if only by descriptions such as the young couple who bought Mrs. Brown's old house, or that family living next to Mrs. Whitley in the new houses. Like most mining villages, there is a strong community and a tendency for some people to live for today. The saying that there are more pubs than houses in Great Houghton was not exaggerated until the mid 1970s, when Ideal Homes and other private builders saw their opportunity to build. I think we're down to one. And I've only been here about 6 years, and it's gone from 3 to 1 within those 6 years. So it's a downward trajectory. Great Houghton, however, is steeped in history, and many of its old inhabitants are only too willing to reminisce and tell of times remembered. The hall was one of the fashionable residences of Sir Godfrey Rhodes, who built the fine Elizabethan manor on the site where now stands the Old Hall Inn. It doesn't quite. The Old Hall Inn, which is just on the front roadside, I believe the old hall was about 50 to 80 metres back, which is why I've got like the secret passage of it going through my garden. There's a secret passage going through the church. Someone, when they were digging the fence up, putting the fence in at the bottom of my garden, they said that they found a lot of the stones and it's partly collapsed, but I'd love to uncover it. I bet there's the Holy Grail. Where was I up to? Getting distracted? A man of more note than Sir Godfrey, so the house books say, was his son, Sir Edward, who stood out conspicuously as a parliamentarian on the commencement of the Civil Wars. Sir Edward's sister married the great royalist Strafford. However, Sir Edward appeared on Lord Newcastle's published list of traitors and served under Cromwell at the Battle of Preston. We still seem to have a problem with royals around our area. When King Charles was crowned, the very day of his ceremony, a statue went up just on the corner of the village celebrating Oliver Cromwell. Maybe that's a sign. Not only was the hall at Great Houghton frequented by many eminent members of court, Queen Anne was said to have spent 3 days there when travelling from Scotland to London to meet Prince George of Denmark, whom she married. It was also known throughout the country as a haven for prosecuted clergy of the period, the Rhodes family being great patrons of nonconformity. Another famous resident of Great Houghton was the Corn Law rhymer Ebenezer Elliott. He's someone we cover in our series, so I won't spoil it. He lived in retirement for the last 9 years of his life at Hargate Hill, just on the edge of the village before the common begins. Deeply moved by poverty and the suffering among the unemployed. During the slump after the end of the Napoleonic Wars, he pressed for parliamentary reforms. He lived just long enough to see the fulfilment of his life's work and to enjoy the countryside which he so loved. He is buried in Darfield churchyard, and inscribed on the tomb are these words which he wrote himself. Bury me where the orchids bloom, that to my grave and bee may come, and while the wren his dinner gets, murmur a song of violets. And there we have a picture of a very squashed Ebenezer Elliott. Great Houghton was, until the 19th century, a farming village, its total population from the census of 1871 being 243. In 1877, however, Houghton Main Colliery was opened, and later in 1899, only yards away, coal was being extracted from Dearne Valley Colliery. Within living memory, the farmers and miners of the village have had a good social and working relationship. but it would seem that this may not have always been the case. There existed within the village a friendly society named the Ancient Order of Shepherds. Its headquarters were at the Old Crown Inn. I don't know where that one is. Not heard of that one. It was the rule that when a new member was enrolled to enter his prosper and seconder, and also his occupation, the following is a list of members enrolled from 1837 to 1897. We had 8 farmers, 30 labourers, 11 stonemasons, 2 brickmakers, 4 tailors, 4 butchers, 6 shoemakers. Seems excessive, doesn't it, for only 260 people? Carpenters 11, 1 cattle dealer, 1 gardener. They might have had a lot of work to do. 1 plumber and glazier, multitask. 1 schoolmaster, 8 farm labourers, 5 quarrymen, 2 blacksmiths, 1 publican. I thought we said we had more pubs than people. How have we only got 1 publican? Unless they didn't enrol, I don't know. 1 saddler, 1 woodman, 1 grocer, and 1 cordwainer. It is noticeable that until 1897, no coal miner was admitted to the membership. Today, the total population is 2,401, very specific, and the community more of a mixture, perhaps than at any other time, although one head teacher feels that mining communities have a distinction of their own, whatever the location. Schools have a healthy annual intake of young people, and there seems little fear of falling numbers in the area. The council school especially encourages the children to take an interest in the village's history, and we're proud to display historical papers and a booklet produced by Class 3 in 1971. Recorded in the booklet was a talk by the late Mr. Lawrence to the children of his class about the village as he remembered it. I've got a friend called with the surname Lawrence. I wonder if it's one of his ancestors he's from, just down the road. The following has been extracted from the children's booklet. I was born at the common end where Grandfather Roodhouse had the carrier wagon, which went from Great Houghton and Billingly to Barnsley and Doncaster 1 day a week, taking food and various household goods. Uncle Tom was a butcher, and he killed his pigs at home. He then took them to various places on his butcher's cart. It took a long time in those days to sell half a pig. I had another uncle who was a painter and decorator, bell ringer and churchwarden. They do, and these manual labourers do seem to have a few jobs. I remember that he used to take me to Nottingham Goose Fair. Feast Sunday was the time of the hospital sing. It was held in the old hall field, where a stage was erected and combined choirs sang, while an eminent speaker gave the address. Feast Monday began with a cricket match in the morning, with horse and pony racing lasting 2 days. There were potty handicaps. I don't know what a potty handicap is, and I don't want to imagine. Bicycle races and sprints. The day finished with dancing on the cricket pitch. Couldn't they have danced off the cricket pitch, wouldn't they? Why ruin it? Many shopkeepers had their stalls there selling brandy snaps, hot peas and shellfish. It's interesting they sold shellfish because I don't think you can get further away from the coast than we are. We're slap bang in the middle of the country, so that they were managing to get shellfish all the way inland when cars weren't even a thing is very interesting. After the First World War, the feast was held for several years on Brayley Common, 5 acres of free land. The feast came on Good Friday and stayed until Saturday before packing up and moving on to Heath Common. People used to come from all directions until a reverend gentleman from Hemsworth put a stop to it being held on Good Fridays. At feast time, there was a donkey up at the duck pond. Does anybody want to comment what a donkey up might be at a duck pond? And some of the men would ride it up and down the village. Is this the Yorkshire version of a rodeo? A donkey in a duck pond. There were various wells situated at different points in the village. Well Lane, of course, is one example where one went down a set of steps to the well. At the top of Well Lane, Mr. George Roberts had the blacksmith's shop 65 years ago. There was Atterbury's stone quarry down Park Lane, where scythe and grind stones were made and were exported all over the world. Mr. Nicholson made grindstones measuring 4 or 5 feet in diameter for Sheffield Steelworks. It took 2 days to chisel these to shape, and men worked out in the open. Mr. Edgar Noble would go up to sharpen the tools ready for Monday morning. Ours was a quiet farming village of open fields in those days. There were the Brecks, the Garrowbys, reaching up to the Winscover fields down Well Lane and along Howell Wood to Clayton. Most of the rutted lanes led over the fields of farmsteads, and Charlie Growcock lived in the woodman's cottage at the end of Park Lane. He was the woodman on the Wentworth estate. We've got a picture of Park Springs, Sidlow's cottage. If people are really interested, I can try and get these scanned and put onto the background so you can have a look. Just let me know. Up the common was Ebenezer Elliott's house, and Burntwood Hall, where the Badsworths and Fitzwilliam hounds met for the hunt on the 5th of November. Sometimes they met at the Old Crown in the village on days when one couldn't see for fog. I remember my grandfather's kitchen with the delf case and the Toby jug and plates arranged in it. She had a willow-patterned dinner service with so many light blue and dark blue pieces on account of the times they were lent out to the old hall on the occasions of the hunt dinner and came back mixed up with other folks. There are no heavy farming horses in the village now. During the First World War, there were 6 teams of plough horses digging for victory. The dray work for the milk round was done by horse too. Wakefield Brewery brought their barrels by draft horses. A barrel would be 3 crown. My father would order a 6-gallon barrel. I remember the village women would wear shawls, and that old Mrs. Shaw, who lived down Well Lane, made clay balls for decorating doors and scouring. Charas, a kind of bus, were in use in the district in 1920 and carried about 10 people. One had to climb up a pair of wooden steps, which were taken away when the vehicle began to move. One couldn't get out until the steps were brought out at the destination point. As boys, we used to go up the common. We would sing like mudlarks and snare a rabbit for dinner. As boys? I thought this was Mrs. Roebuck. Those were the days. Interview with William Edmund Gregory, who was called Bill, landlord of the Old Hall Inn. I wonder if we'll get to find out about the dog. I want to know about the dog. I won't skip ahead. I know what you're thinking. But no, I did not go strangely bald overnight. Continuity ever. I recorded over an hour and 20 minutes of footage, and unfortunately, Canva seems to have lost an hour of it. So you're missing out on all my spontaneous jokes this time. Also, I think he's cut my hair a bit wrong. I'm sure I've got one side of it longer. So if my wedge distracts you, deal with it. Anyway, I wore the same t-shirt to try and... Anyway. Interview with William Edward Gregory, Bill, landlord of the Old Hall Inn. Known to be quite a lad, Bill has lived in the village all his life and started work at the pits in 1931, aged 14 years. 14, I were off to work, left school on the Friday and started work at Houghton Main Baths on Monday, 1931. They were constructing the baths then, building the lockers that the men would put their clothes in. I wasn't working for the pit then, but when that project finished, I went to Dearne Valley and worked on the pit top for 5 years, and then went down the pit. That was in 1932, before nationalisation. No pit holidays then, no pit baths. You went to work wet and came home wet. There were no messing. If you didn't want to go down, you came home, but it were no a yard. I'm guessing that means you don't get paid. As much as I've lived in Yorkshire, you'll find that language has changed. Let's see. I worked on the pit top for 5 years, then went down the pit as a pony driver. The pit was under private enterprise at that time. It was rough, but I enjoyed it. People today are frightened to work. They don't know what work is. I then worked on the face. It were pretty good. The seams were 4 feet 6 inches high, up to your knees in water and it running on your head, but it was still enjoyable. Different idea of fun to me. I liked it, course I did. There was no machinery in my day. It were a pick and a shovel, hammer and wedge. While I was there, 2 chaps hung themselves. Did you know that? So I don't mean to laugh, but he just said last paragraph how much better it was working in those days. People nowadays afraid of hard work, and then it's horrible. I think we tend to look back at things with rose-tinted glasses. I'm tempted to say, oh, the world was so much better in the 80s or 90s, but I'm not sure it was. Well, maybe than now. But in general, I don't think we've got that much worse, have we? I don't know. I'm fighting for 90s being the best decade. What do you think? They were fed up, except for music. Take that. Oh, my goodness. They were that fed up of working hard and getting no money for it. But it was better. When I first started working on the pit top, working on the screens, I got paid 1 and 11 pence a day. I was 15 or 16 then. I went down the pit and I got half a crown a day. I came out of the pit and just after the war, 1931 to 1949. I took my own business then. I had the big shop on the main road, the one that used to be the furniture shop, and a little one across the road before Mrs. Platt came. She took the shop next door. I sold everything, but I was a greengrocer and I used to have a travelling shop. Out with the horse and cart, out all hours, day and night I was. Grew my own produce on the allotments as well. And that is the Old Hall Inn. That's what my house was built on top of, unfortunately. It's not as nice as that one, but I still love my house. I took the Old Hall in 1953. It was a pub, of course, then, but stately when I was a kid. I had it when it burnt down. There was a penny imprinted in the steps. It had always been there since I can remember, since being 5 years old. I never knew who put it there, haven't a clue. I'm not absolutely sure, but I think that used to be an old superstition, that they used to cement a penny in the steps. If I remember, I have to look it up at the end. There were all kinds of things left in the hall. Foxes, shields, and swords hung on the wall. That lad of mine took the swords and swapped them for forks to clean his pigs out. Swords! These could have been owned by Oliver Cromwell, the Royalists. Historic pieces of art, work. But no, let's clean the pigs out with them. The paintings would be worth a fortune now if I'd kept them. Don't ask what he did with them. Use them to cow bedding or something, I don't know. There was the blue room, and inside were all oak panels. The staircase was made out of a tree trunk, spiral-like. Upstairs was all oak panelled, and so wide you could run a double-decker bus. The floor was a sort of red cement or something. I will tell you who asked for the old oak panelling. Old Mr. Dawson. Dr. Dawson, sorry. I said I would get it for him, but he had to ring the brewery to ask. Next day a wagon from the brewery drew up and took it all away. This is not my favourite guy in the world. As somebody who loves history, I would have been fighting tooth and nail to keep all of these things in the best condition I possibly could. There was one tunnel in the building. They said it ran to Darfield, but I don't know. After 5 or 6 yards, it was cemented up. Now, that is exciting. I don't know if you've seen my talk on LinkedIn, but I have actually got a tunnel that runs out of my back garden. I've shown people a little bit inside the house, but I'm not so sure that's part of it. I think he's wrong, though, because he says that the tunnel goes to Darfield, and I think it just went to the church on the corner. It's only like 100 metres away. If it went to Darfield, it's like 6 miles. I can't imagine they built a tunnel 6 miles to go to church when they had their own personal chapel in the back garden. And in fact, I do have, someone else gave me a bit of a brochure about the relationship between the hall and the church. If people are interested, I can read that later. Let me know. Just want to know what you guys want. All 7 of you. You can do well, that well. Flying this channel. Don't understand why. They said to pick a niche. What better niche than Great Houghton history? Nobody else is covering it. Where are we up to? Him selling everything from the hall. So this tunnel went for 5 or 6 yards and it was cemented up. Although, sorry, I'm going back on about this tunnel. When people put the fence in at the end of my garden, apparently they found a collapsed tunnel, they said. I don't know, I can tell if tunnel's collapsed. But it was full of brickwork when they were trying to put all the post holes in. And if that's correct, that would lead to this church of St. Michael's. It's heading away from Darfield, so unless they're meandered. Who let this guy buy this house? I'll tell you what was in there. It was, when I was a kid, a stuffed dog as tall as a cigarette. It's there! We've got it! Tall as a cigarette. That is absolutely tiny. So, I don't know, this big for a dog? I've still not found any pictures of it. I've tried looking on the internet and I cannot find this, but I don't see why everyone would be lying about this. It just does not make sense why anyone would lie about it. So I really want to track this dog down. Anyone want to help me? People came from all over to look at it. How has nobody got a picture? I'm going to start asking about in the village, see if anyone knows it. I don't touch it now. It's so old. So it sounds like he's still got it. For once, he's got something. It looks like a bull mastiff. It's not a pup, it's fully mature. Again, that seems to be in contradiction to what we read yesterday. Yesterday we read that it was 17 weeks old and it died because it had, well, I don't know if it's because it had no thyroid gland, but it had no thyroid gland. My wife didn't like the old place. It was cold and damp. The oven was so big with spittle, and up the chimney were ladders that lads climbed to clean it. And at either side were settees that you could sit in. The upstairs in one of the rooms was a spy hole where you could see what the kitchen staff were doing. Yeah, you don't want to let those working class people get together. As a kid, I was frightened to death of that place. It was always been known to be haunted. Great. I don't want to know where this is going. Yeah. Built on top of it. What are all those banging in the night? In fact, 2 lorry drivers came while I've been here and they said, "Are you the licensee of that old place?" I said, "Yes, why?" They said, "Have you seen Oak Funny?" I said, "I've seen a lot of funny things." He said, "We went by one morning at 3 o'clock and there were a bloke there on guard with a big Cossack hat on." And we both, I've got a shiver down my spine as I read that one. And we both saw it. As soon as we stopped, engine gun were down and he vanished. I said, "Come off it." Why? Why would there be somebody in a Cossack hat, a ghost of somebody in a Cossack? We're nowhere near Russia. Russia, as far as I know, never got involved in the um, Civil War. No, I don't know. Again, interesting if we can look into it. Too many rabbit holes. I need a rabbit hole jumper. Now, this is true. My oldest lad, Malcolm, he's 40 now. When he was a kid, he used to come to bedroom and said, "Dad, lights on again." My wife used to play hell. I used to drink quite a bit. You know what it's like. What, in the good old times, you need a drink, did you, buddy? Anyway, I said to her, "You can put the light off tonight," and she did. When that lad got up the next morning, the light was still on. This might be the premise of the movie Gaslight. Is this where the whole phrase came from? The experience of Bill, the landlord at Great Houghton. Now, how did it get on? Was he putting it on? He said not. One morning when I got up, the gas ring was on, but I never saw anything. I leave my gas off. In fact, there's a couple of times when my oven has been left on. I always assumed it was the cats. I need to look out for a guy in a Cossack hat who likes cooking. The first night I slept there, I was scared stiff. Why did he buy this house? I don't know. He doesn't seem to have had a love for it. I'd heard tales from the old landlord. The wife wouldn't sleep in it. It was a funny bedroom. The light switch was outside the door. I had the old dog with me. Just as I was undressed, ready to get in bed, there was such a to-do. My hair stood on end and I ran to the door and hit my nose. So he decided to sell the doll. That's a useful bit of information. I thought it was a ghost the dog was after, but when it came to it, it was the old landlord's cat that had sneaked under the bed. What a story! Queen Anne was supposed to have slept there in a four-poster bed. That bed was still there. There was all the tapestry and the lot on it. It was an interesting place, but when I took it in 1953, there were 3 parts on it, then demolished, well, going to ruins. In 53, all back end was more or less in ruins. When I was a youngster, I knew everybody. If anybody asked where so-and-so lived, I could tell them. Today, I don't know. The doctor lived in South Kirby and came into the village on a white stallion, riding it. That sounds impressive, doesn't it? He had a surgery on School Street. There were fairs then every year on that ground where the old folks' bungalows are, and people went to town on a horse and cart on bank holidays. If you want my opinion, probably not. The village is absolutely spoilt. In my young day, there was no aggro. Everybody knew everybody. Take this recreational ground. When we were kids, we would have been hung, drawn, and quartered. I'm not sure if he's been factual. Look at the rubbish in it. We would have been sent down the line. Look at the welfare hall. They would put all the windows through there. It's no good blaming unemployment. We were unemployed. Well, you weren't. But we didn't do things like that. They would have killed us. Teachers would get summoned for caning kids. We daren't tell our parents we had been caned, or they would say, "You've asked for it, or you wouldn't have got caned." Today, everything has gotten out of hand. It's spoilt. For me, they have spoilt it. Don't get me wrong, not everybody is the same, but for me, I preferred the old days. It was a lot pleasanter living, except for the suicides and the the what is it, emphysema from working down the mines, and the number of times that mine collapsed and people were killed. I don't know if we'll get onto it later, but it wasn't in the single digits anyway. And I think, as I said, I think this is rose tinted glasses. I don't think me and this guy would get on. Extracts from Weekly Independent 1890. Queen Anne's bed. I know, the bit you were all waiting for. It was believed that the Queen Anne stayed at Houghton Hall for 3 days when travelling from Scotland to London to meet Prince George of Denmark, whom she married. Queen Anne was the last of the reigning Stuarts and was born in 1664. The bed, reported to have been slept in, was a four-poster of walnut with a red canopy and coverlet and had been undisturbed for well over 200 years until Bill the landlord came. Sold it. The mattress probably represented an early attempt at a sprung effect. That's interesting. He never mentioned the mattress. I wonder if that was still there at the time. Queen Anne's room had one small window which overlooked the Chapel of Ease. The walls were panelled with rich oak, valued at £1,000. And over the fireplace were a series of richly carved oak freezers. I think they're just like panels of a specific event that might have happened. But again, testing my memory, I can't. It is said that the hall was at one time famed for its wonderful oak, and thousands of pounds worth was sold, including 1,600 to America. Could we have it back, please? I am happy to spend 1,600 to get my oak back. It'd look amazing. Now I've just got these boring whitewashed walls. Although they did do, which I thought was quite cool, they opened it all up by putting a load of steel girders across the roof. So we've got now a much bigger area rather than the tiny rooms, but that doesn't make it easy for heating. Especially keep getting these cold shivers whenever this Cossack guy walks past. The old oak possessed passages between the walls, little winding steps inside the turret, and huge cellars. There was a passage connecting the hall with the Chapel of Ease. There we go. The Chapel of Ease, I believe, is what's now called St. Michael's Chapel, which I learned during my research. The church has to be built on a hill for it to be named after St. Michael. Again, this is quick Google. Don't take my word for it. Just opposite the Queen's room was a little hole through which spies could watch everything taking place downstairs. Most of the bedrooms led off a wide stone passage in which horses were tethered, and from there to the ground level was a very steep passage. Extracts from letters from Mr. Woodcock of Hemsworth to the Reverend J. Hunter, dated September the 13th, 1823. Mr. Milnes had at one time intended to make Houghton Hall his residence. I don't know who Mr. Milnes was. It had been occupied by the Rhodes family from the time of Sire Godfrey until the death of Mrs. Rhodes in 1789. Much of the original furniture remained till Bill the landlord. So I'll stop with. Some rooms were hung with tapestries, and in others were portraits of Queen Elizabeth and many distinguished persons of her court. Mr. R. Milnes found the hall in a state of decay and expended £1,000 in alterations and repairs, resided 10 weeks and abandoned it to tenants. The furniture and tapestry were removed. Oh, I can't blame him for this one. Many of the windows were blocked up, dilapidation followed, and what remains of the hall was licensed as a public house. Mr. Milnes took the old furniture from Houghton to Fryston, burnt most of it, and the pictures may be somewhere in the garrets, perhaps. This is... I can't let this go. This is one of the things where I'd say it is much better nowadays than then. We, I think, have a bit more reverence for the old equipment. I don't imagine Queen Anne's bed would have been disposed of, and all these paintings would have been just taken and got rid of. It'd been nice to have seen them in some kind of museum, at least, if not just within the building. But times change, and hopefully, it's the dog I want to track down. You can tell my heart's bleeding. Right, let me go to the next one. Memories of Mrs. Platt's semi-retired shopkeeper. I think she got a mention, didn't she, in, who was it, Bill's, the landlord's memoirs. Mrs. Platt's opened her shop in Great Houghton in 1956 at a rent of 10 shillings and no pence a week. In 1964, the shop and small cottages were demolished, and Mrs. Platt's moved her business across the road to the house she now lives in. Robert, her only son, and his wife took over the business 4 years ago, and again moved its location across to the other side of the road. Mrs. Platt still helps out during busy times, but now has more time for other things. Whilst drives are her main interest, but she also goes to evening classes for the education she missed as a child. Another reason things are better nowadays. Come on, Bill, I'm trying to convince you. Um, Arthur, her husband, was born in the village. She comes from a farming family. My customers have been very loyal to me, I will say that. I've never retired or got rich, but they were very loyal. When the supermarket started, it hit us like a brick, but the customers, they came back. At that time, I was poorly and off work for 6 weeks, so I didn't know what was going off really until I got back and found out. But we pulled it round. Then we came across here, which many a time I wish we hadn't. It cost me £1,000 to come in here to refit the shop and the house, but we pulled round from the supermarkets easily. Let's face it, I've always had opposition from the other shops, but I've always had very loyal customers. Bit of a lesson there. Make sure you treat your customers well. Outside Briar's buildings. Those buildings, I believe, still exist with that kind of shop front, but I'm not absolutely positive. I think they are now a barber's and a. It's not where I went, just in case that's going to put you off. And a pizza shop, if I remember correctly. But again, it's not something. I should take more notice of these things when I'm going around. Friday nights and Saturday mornings there used to be queuing outside my shop across the road. The old ladies used to sit on the window battens. They used to say, "We'll wait till you've got clear." That was the old-fashioned shopping days. Then the new people have all got cars. The little shops don't do badly, but to me they don't do as well as I did. I think for the houses that have gone up in the village, if I'd had all those houses, I would have been absolutely made. When I had my shop, there were 8 other shops against 4 shops today, and we did better than the 4 do today. The new people are supermarket minded, you see. They come from away and call on their way home from work. Down with supermarket, Sam Wither. They just rip money from everybody rather than, as I say, I try and avoid shopping in supermarkets. I like to go to farm shops, but that is no relation to this story. But I don't think the atmosphere has changed. Some people say there's nothing here, but I like this village. We can go out of this dorm and walk for miles without touching a main road, and yet we live on the main road. You can stop out all day. Where else can you do that? I saw the old hall on fire. In the old house I had a wardrobe with a mirror in it, and as I was laid in bed I could see the old hall on fire through the mirror. I opened my mouth like the police came to see me. I could see it blazing through the mirror. When we used to come on the farm on weekends from Leeds before we moved here, we used to bring in the calves and go out on the land, helping to stuck corn. It was a different life from today. The people are all relations to me, being relations of my husband. We won't dwell on that. I don't know what that means. Let's move quickly. It took me a while to settle. It's a different life from the town when we lived at Leeds and could go to the pictures. That's the cinema, or theatre as they call it in America, I learned. Theatre for us is where you have a Shakespearean play or Little Shop of Horrors, not where you're watching TV. What do you call it? What do you Americans call a theatre? What I'd call a theatre. We got a TV in 1954, or for a drink. We only stopped in on Thursday nights. We both worked, and on Thursday we cleaned the house. When we came here, well, if you want nightlife, well, there just isn't any, is there? All my friends have got cars, and I go to the whist drives with them. I went to Doncaster last night, and it's Thurnscoe tonight, but that's a dying thing. The old club every Saturday night, they had a whist drive there. I don't know what a whist drive is. People used to call to the shop on their way there for last minute bits. I was rust off my feet at that time. They took it down to the welfare hall, but then it fizzled out. Our Robert thought that living here was great when he was young. They could play down Park Lane. Can you remember the quarry? In them days, you didn't have to worry the kids could go and play. Don't let them play in the quarry. We've got all these parks. Our Robert was really free. Can you remember our little dog? Our Robert took her all day long to play in the Garrasby, which is a small wood. The next day she came home. She'd had enough. Apart from the new houses, I don't think the village has changed. There's no change in atmosphere. I mean, if you wanted entertainment, you had to go out, although there is dancing and the welfare on a Thursday evenings and the bingo once a week. A little bit of a advertisement there. I'm doing my best for the tourist industry. Come down, we've got a couple of statues you can see, a nice old church. I'll give you a cup of tea. Memory. Don't ask me to make a cup of tea though. I'm awful. It does not taste good. Memoirs of Mr. Robson, Jack, retired miner, 59 years of age, born 1924. Mr. Robson finished work in 1975 through ill health, heart trouble, and arthritic spine from the good old days. He has always been a club man and sits at the door of the top club, the High Street Working Men's Club, where his oldest son Frank is president. He gave a cheery welcome to all and is well liked by the locals. Most of his family live around here in the village. I was born in 1924 at number 2 Rotherham Road. We then moved down to Sandhill onto New Street when I was 2 years old. My dad was only a miner. He was that poor he couldn't pay the rent of the council house, so he had to move down Sandhill to the stone houses, which were cheaper rents. It does bring an interesting question because old Bill, who bought the old Hall Inn, how did he get the money to do that? Because, as I say, miners were not well paid. It's interesting how he managed to actually build a life for himself while selling all the assets. There were 5 children. I'm the third. The village was only small. The houses at Sandhill didn't have flushing toilets. They were middens. You would not want a midden nowadays. They were like, even they still had them. When I was a child, my nana used to have it's like an outside toilet where it's absolutely freezing. That's all I remember of it. You had to come out of the house and walk across the yard to the middens. There was a bloke in the village called Dick Foster. He used to come round with a wagon chucking all these ashes and stuff out of the middens. And then he had emptied them, he would go round with disinfectant to kill the smell off. The house was a 2 up and 2 down. It was all fire cooking then, a fire range with an oven. We used to bake bread in the oven. We used to play in the street at marbles or kick can. Not much traffic then, with very few cars on the road. They were all open fields where the houses are now. The village was small at the time. I knew everyone in the village. It were that small. All the school lads knew each other. My granddad came from Geordieland, which is Newcastle. It's just between Yorkshire and Scotland, if that helps anybody. The Robson name comes from there. It does. Manchester United in England captain Brian Robson, one of the best players the world has ever seen, comes from up there. I wonder if he's a relation. My dad came from up there with him. He married my mother. She had been married previous. Her husband was a collier at Wath, Maine. He got killed in the pit. See? I'm not lying. It was dangerous times. I would not wish for those times back, I'm afraid. The Robsons probably came to Houghton to work in the pits. I started school at 5 years old. They were very strict. If you did out wrong, you got the cane. When you got the cane, you got the cane proper. It hurt. I've always been a smoker all my life, ever since I was a little lad, 5 or 6 years of age. Ever since then. I used to pick tab ends up and I used to do it at school. I'd go in the toilets. Mr. Bollens was the head teacher, and he would walk around at play times. He couldn't get in this toilet, and there was smoke coming out of the vent at the top into my room, he said. He gave us some stick for that, I can tell you. There's the old lamp cabin of the colliery. I left school at 14, and at that particular time we had a month off in August. After a fortnight of the holidays, my dad said, "Come on, I'm going to take you to the pit for a job." I saw the pit manager. Well, my dad did, and I was there. He said, "Right, start work on Monday on morning shift." Well, I got my togs on, old clothes, and a flat cap. My dad took me to the lamp cabin. Lamp cabin chap said, "New starter?" to my dad, Jim. My dad said, "Yes," and he gave me a lamp, one of them Davy lamps. "What do I do with this?" I said to my dad. "Hang it on your belt," he said. It was so heavy I could hardly walk. I was only small, a bit of a lad. So anyhow, I went down the pit. I had to climb these steps first to get in the chair. They were shaking with the vibration of the fan taking air down the pit. They scared me to death. When we got to the chair, I queued up with the old men. I was the only little lad there. When we got to the chair, they were all holding their caps. I did the same. Oh, gosh. So I've actually been down the coal mine. It's like there's a national coal mine near me where you get to experience what it was like. And they gave you a hard hat, thankfully, rather than a flat cap, because I must have smacked my head about 7 times. I suppose you'd learn if you didn't have the hard hat on. You'd be a bit more cautious. But I suppose with my hair, I got like a bit of an early warning system as well. Maybe that'd have helped. I knew what it was for because when they let you go down the shaft, the wind blows your cap off if you don't hold on to them. It must have been going at 60 miles an hour, and when you get halfway down, your belly turns over. It feels as if you're coming back up again until you get used to it. It is a very strange experience. For me, you just feel so much heavier because of the bigger pull on you from the Earth's core. So yeah, it is very different being down a mine. When I got down the pit, I had to go to the box hole to see the pit bottom gaffer. He said, "Come on, Jack, I'll show you what to do," and he had me coupling tubs together. I was in the pit bottom, but the working went out 3 or 4 miles. You had to walk there with no paddies then. After I'd done a fortnight in the pit bottom, this gaffer said, "Now then, Jack, you're going out onto the districts and to the coal face." I said, "Who's going to show me the way, as it was pitch black and you've only got this lamp?" He said, "This chap will take you to the first station and somebody else will take you from there." Okay, sorry for interrupting. I don't know if you find these bits interesting, but I actually had the experience of going to a slate mine, and they were saying that the miners had to buy their own candles that they'd used to work with, and these candles were a significant portion of the wages. So they'd almost be working in the pitch black all the time. They'd be like blowing the candle out, they'd have a look what they were doing, blow the candle out, and then start chiseling. And as I say, they were working the pitch black. That's how I went until I got to the coalface. I'd never seen a coalface in my life. All the men were working with picks and shovels. I said to the deputy, "What have I got to do here?" He said, "All them men are throwing coal onto the belt. What goes onto the bottom belt will come back to you. Keep it clear, don't let it get clogged up." I did that from 14 to 18. Then I started courting, as in getting a girlfriend. Bit of romance. Well, I was courting before, but I had to get married. I said to my dad, "I've got to get married," and he played roasting hell up. You had to get your parents' signature, but when I gave him the form, he threw it on the fire. Well, I hope to think he had an actual plan, not just, "I have to get married," and that was his only thoughts. Dad's not keen. Oh gosh, we see why next sentence. My wife was 6 months pregnant before he would let me get married. It's a bit drastic. He said I wasn't old enough. Then I had to go on the machines where there was much bigger money. Not the machines they have today, the hard way. I helped out on old Mick Ashwood's farm too after a shift at the pit. Many a times I've driven a tractor. It isn't a life down the pit. There's water and gas to contend with. There are some good men in the pit though. You've got to work together, but I don't regret leaving. I bet. Bit more of a honest take, I think. Memoirs of Kathleen Taylor, farmer's wife. Kathleen Taylor lives in the large house on the main road opposite the old Hall Inn with her two sons. The new house is built on the site of the old manor house, said to have been built in the 17th century. I think they're talking about the old Hall Inn rather than her farmhouse there. Kathleen and Alf farmed Old Fort Howell Farm until Alf's death 10 years ago. Kathleen then sold the land, some of it to a building contractor, but mostly it was divided between the other farms in the village. Interesting, well, I think it's interesting. The fields at the back have all got names that were carry the names of the original farmers. I don't know any of them. It's just what someone told me from the History Society. Bring back the History Society. That's what we want. Frank Slater, Kathleen's father, was born in the village. He had his own threshing machine and later baling machine business. The village folk say he was quite a character. I was married in 1953, but I didn't come into Houghton until 1954, because when we got married we had nothing, no house and nothing in view. But once we got married, well, we knew we had to start pushing for something then. I lived in the children's home where I worked, and Alf still lived with his parents. We tried for loads and loads of farms and small holdings, but nothing came of it. And then we finally got this one, which we were very fortunate to get because it was the only farm the Earl of Fitzwilliam had sold for years, and don't think they have sold any since. No, they don't tend to give much away, these landlords. They like to own their farms so that they have them all in the same area. They don't like to look at a great map and say it's all ours except that bit and that bit. No social mobility, I tell you. That's a picture of the farm. We moved into it in May. It was 133 acres when the old people had finished with the tenancy. It was an absolute awful condition. In fact, instead of us paying the valuation of some of the land they paid us, it was that bad. It was all covered in weeds and like a swamp. It hadn't been drained, you see, but it was an old person who had it. He lost his wife and was too ill and infirm to bother with it. We had death watch beetle, no inside toilet and no hot water. At that time, people were getting electric washers, but they hadn't thrown their old things out, so I managed to get two. One was clamped onto a chair and one clamped onto a table. You know these ringing machines that you turn? I think she's talking about a mangle. Do you know where they've... So what they used to have is like two rollers and you'd put your washing between and you had this handle that you'd roll your washing through, I assume to try and squeeze out all the water so it's not absolutely drenched when you start drying it. My mother, she had a rubbing board and a couple of peggy tubs. So the rubbing board was the one with the slats on it. That won't be my thumbnail. And the peggy tub, I think, was the one where it's like a barrel and you've got a big stick coming out of the barrel with like a lid on. And this is even worse for my thumbnail. And you're like trying to plunge the clothes down to get them all clean. Before we could get turned round and make a decent living, it was about 5 years. My housekeeping was 20 shillings a week. And Alf, he went to Doncaster Market, but he couldn't afford the price of a cup of tea, and we never had newspapers. We put everything we got back into the farm and didn't buy anything for inside. Things did get progressively better over the years. We had Frank after about a year and 7 months, but it was about 5 years really before we felt any benefit. I didn't know anybody. I didn't get to know anybody because we were always busy working. When you have your own farm, you're on your own little island. I started to get to know people when I was going to the clinic with Frank. I got to know the mothers and their children. I then didn't get to know anyone else until I took Nigel to the clinic, but we were quite happy. It didn't worry me at all. The farm was our interest. When Nigel was about 2 years old, we got a van and started to get out a bit then. They told us, well, it's in a book, I could show you that from the farmhouse, was an old manor house. It was a listed building and I wouldn't have been able to demolish it. Oh my goodness. But for the fact that there was no money in the kitty at Barnsley. If they could have gone half with me to restore the building, then I would have had to have it restored. Well, I couldn't afford to restore it. When you start with an old building, you never know what you are going to come up against. In the cellar, a great big cellar, there were 3 huge basins, lead lined, sunk with a big stone slab. I never got to know what they were used for. It may have been milk, but I don't know how milk and lead get on together. Probably not well, would be my guess. They didn't bother in them days. No, but lead poisoning's fine. You just died and got buried, and that was the end of it. It's bleaker than my points I was making. Never mind, bit of lead poisoning. Who cares? The rafters in the house, they weren't in good condition at all, and all had been eaten away by the beetles. John Paul and Ringo, hungry. We discovered when they were pulling the house down that there was an inglenook fireplace in it, but that was when it was being demolished. They're an absolute gorgeous fireplace. Right, guys, because the full episode went on for 2 hours and 3 minutes, I've had some expert advice to say, why don't you split it in half? And, well, yeah, that would be a good idea. Why did I think of that? So I shall split it here. So it'll also make it a bit more palatable for you, rather than having 2 hours of me droning on about inglenook fireplaces and little dogs and Queen Anne's bed. There must be more that happened in the village. We'll get to it, I'm sure. We'll have a look at episode 2 coming up right now. 2 uploads in one day. Exciting. How do I stop it?